What if you found a file with your name on it from 20 years before you were born? Not a name that sounds like yours, your exact name. Same first name, same last name. Ethan Brooke found that file on a quiet Tuesday night, alone in a room full of old paper. He thought it was a mistake, a typo, someone else's files, filed wrong. He was wrong. And by the end of that night, he would understand something about himself that no one had ever told him. Ethan needed money, simple as that. He just finished school, and the only job he could find fast was at Oak Ridge Care Center, an old mental health facility outside of the town. They just needed someone to scan their old paper files into a computer system. Boxes and boxes of them, records going back 50 years. It wasn't exciting work. Most night he sat alone in a small back room, pulling folder out of dusty boxes, scanning each pages and putting them into a new digital folder. The building was mostly empty at night, just him, a few night staff down the hall, and a thousand of old patient files. He didn't mind the quiet. He liked being alone with simple, boring work. No stress, no people to deal with. For the first 2 weeks, it was just paper. Name he didn't know, dates from decades ago. Nothing strange until the third week. That's when he pulled a file with a torn, faded label, and on the front, in an old typewriter letter, it said Ethan Brooks, his own name. At first, he laughed a little. He figured it was just someone else with the same name. It happens, common enough name first and last. He opened the folder anyway just to check. The first page had a date at the top. He did the math without even trying. The date was 22 years before he was born. His stomach turned, just slightly. He told himself this was easy to explain. Maybe a grandfather, maybe an uncle. Family reused name all the time. He kept reading. The file had basic patient information, age, admission date, a short medical history. The age listed was 24. Ethan did the math again. If this man had been born that long ago, and Ethan's own father had been young at that time, it didn't add up to the grandfather. It landed almost exactly on the age his own father would have been. There was no photo in the file, just pages of notes, written by different doctors over what looked like years. One note near the middle caught his eye. It said the patient often talked about hearing things get louder before they went quiet. Another note a few pages later mentioned a long stretches of memory loss the patient could not explain. Ethan sat there in a quiet room, staring at the page, feeling something crawl slowly up the back of his neck. He told himself it was nothing, just an old file, a coincidence. But he didn't put it back in the box that night. He kept it. The next morning, Ethan called his mother. He asked her as normally as he could if there had ever been anyone else in the family named Ethan. An uncle, maybe, a cousin, someone who used the same name before him. There was a pause on the phone, a pause that went on just a little too long. Why are you asking me that? She said, her voice suddenly careful. He told her about the file. He kept his voice light, like it was just a funny mix up at work. But she didn't laugh. Ethan, she said slowly, we need to talk about this in person, not on the phone. He drove to her house that same day. He couldn't wait. She sat him down at the kitchen table, and for a long moment she didn't say anything at all. Then she told him something he had never once been told in 24 years. He was adopted. His biological father, his real father, had also been named Ethan Brooke, and his biological father had spent years on and off as a patient at different care centers, dealing with a serious mental health condition that had never been fully treated. His mother and stepfather had made a choice, back when Ethan was a baby, never to tell him. They didn't want him growing up scared of something that might not even apply to him. They wanted him to have a normal life. Ethan sat there at the table, quiet, trying to fit this new information into 24 years of his life that suddenly felt different. Is he still alive? Ethan finally asked. His mother shook her head. He passed away when you were young. But Ethan, that file you found, if it is from Oak Ridge, that might be him. Ethan went back to work that night with different kind of focus. He searched through the older unscanned boxes, digging for anything else connected to the name. It took hours, but eventually in a box near the back, he found more. Later files, later year. The same name, the same slow, careful handwriting from different doctors across the time. The later file told a fuller story. His biological father had a real diagnosed condition, one that came with the sudden mood changes and had gone mostly untreated for years before he ever got a real help. Some note mention him hearing things that weren't there, and other note mention long gaps in memory he couldn't explain, days he couldn't account for. Ethan sat back in his chair, staring at the pages spread across the desk, and that's when a small cold thought crossed his mind. A thought that had nothing to do with his father at all. He thought about the last few months of his own life, the headache that came out of nowhere, the days that felt slightly blurry, like watching them through a fog, the time his roommate had asked him about a conversation he had no memories of having. He had explained all of it away: stress, bad sleep, a new job. He hadn't thought, not once, that it could be something else, something that maybe ran in the family, something he had never had a reason to watch for, because no one had ever told him there was anything to watch for at all. Ethan sat alone in that small back room for a long time that night, the old file open in front of him, next to nothing but silence and the hum of the building's old lights. The scary part was never that the file had his name on it. Names repeat. Family reuses them all the time without meaning anything dark by it. The scary part was what the file had quietly handed him: a mirror he didn't know he needed. For years he had brushed off small things about himself, moments that didn't add up, gaps he couldn't explain. He had built simple easy story to cover each one, the same way his mother had built a simple easy story to protect him as a kid. Neither story was exactly lie, but neither one was the whole truth either. He thought about his father sitting somewhere in the same building, decades ago, maybe in the same kind of quiet room, being handed answer too late, after years of unexplained gaps that no one caught in time. Ethan didn't know what any of this meant for him. He didn't know if what his father had lived with was something he was living with too. He didn't know if the fog in his own head from the last few months meant something small or something worth real careful attention. But for the first time, he stopped brushing it off. He picked up his phone, sat there in that small back room surrounded by 50 years of other people's stories, and called to make an appointment with the doctor of his own. Not because he was scared, because now he finally knew enough to ask the right question. The same question someone should have helped his father ask a long time before it was too late. Some family secrets are kept to protect us, but protection built on silence can leave us facing the exact same danger alone, with none of the warning we deserve. Ethan didn't find a stranger's file that night. He found the first honest look at himself he had ever had.